Hello there, folks. I've got Lisa Albrecht from Albrecht Solar on the line here, so to speak. And we're going to take a different format with this video because this is about our solar PV system. And we wanted to do is do a little kind of a chat here with Lisa to look at the overall design of our solar panel system for our Happy Boolo house here and to see what Lisa has to say about it. So hi, Lisa, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So, you know what, I remember whenever we started the project, we knew that we wanted to do solar. And when we engaged you on the project, just wanted to get kind of just tell people what your initial reactions to what our vision was, and what were you thinking at the very beginning as far as what were the possibilities, and what did you think we would be capable of doing here?
Yeah, no, we were really lucky because you had already picked Mike Coleman as your architect, and he was already very well versed with solar. The very first thing that's the most important part, whether it's a retrofit for an existing house or whether we're working with new construction, the first thing I want to know is how much control do I have over the roof? And Mike had already recognized that you guys wanted solar. I think that was an early on goal, and so. Your original house did not have a great roof line. And so changing the roof so that we had a really good canvas of using south facing roof at roughly a 512 pitch, a nice pitch for our latitude, and south facing, as well as making sure there was originally a tree that was going to minimize some of the solar output. And so really kind of looking at the site conditions to make sure that they were optimal for solar. That was the first most important step.
Yeah, and I remember one of the early renderings that Mike gave us showed a little array of solar panels on the actual garage roof itself, in addition to some panels up on the new geometry of the west and the south, the west and the east roof, which had both been pitched south. And I wondered about what went into your design thinking as far as how many panels do we need, how much would they generate, and what sort of set the limit for you as far as obviously the physical space of the roof, but what were you thinking as far as how many we would need to do the job?
Yeah, so we were really lucky because you guys had already lived there for a while. And so one of the things that Mike and I discussed was, sizing the system to your historic loads. At that time, we still don't know really until you guys move in exactly what all of your loads are going to be, but we did have a good idea because we already had some historic usage from your ComEd bills. So in order to make sure that you were qualifying for all of the ComEd opportunities with what's called net metering, which we can talk about later, we wanted to size your system to roughly 100% of your historic load on the old house. Knowing that your envelope was going to be better. So although there were some things that you were adding in terms of, electric appliances, you were also benefiting because you were going to have a tighter envelope, a more efficient home. You were looking at passive design. You had a lot of other things that were going to reduce your usage. So we figured that would be a good balance of where we would start, is just looking at the roof that was available. We did take the panels off of the flat section of the roof and just leave them on the pitched because that actually got us to 100% of your historic loads. So it was a great fit. It was kind of like putting a puzzle together.
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt like. And yeah. I know that Amy's off camera here, but Amy and I really appreciated the fact that you just took it and ran with it. And this is one aspect of the overall project where we felt like we didn't really need, there weren't really any questions. So it's like, well, would you like it here? Would you like it there? It was sort of like you already knew what the right optimal solution was. And for us, it was just it was like, for us, the closest to a complete turnkey operation. And we really enjoyed that because it was like, I remember showing up, which we'll be showing in the blog post, visually other still images. I remember showing up and having the crew there installing, that day. And I'm like, well, I didn't know where any of this was going to go, which is great because everyone else had the plan. So yeah. It was fabulous to be able to not have to be, Amy and I are going to talk about this in a later post about what is it like to be a homeowner and how much of a project do need to manage yourself as a homeowner versus just completely turning over other aspects of it to your different contractors and your different designers and your different experts.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to stop it there, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important part of the puzzle is just making sure that you've got a good team.
Yeah.
So, in this case, we had Mike, who, had just tremendous building architecture and project design or project management experience. I've been doing solar since 2007. And then just working with the electricians, making sure that we were coordinated. We talked to the roofer. We made sure that the roofer was aware of everything that was going on. And then it was just a matter of bringing my subcontractors rethink in to actually execute the plan. So it really came together really well. And the same thing that I looked at for your home is what I look at everybody's house. The very first step is I look at your roof. The second step is I look at your electric bill. And then the third step is I put those two things together to eliminate all of the variables to create the budget. If the budget's off, we can tweak it and find the right fit so that we're really customizing every system to meet your goals.
Yeah, I think also working with our electrician was probably an integral part of it as well, to make sure that he understands, where this is connecting and
Yeah, particularly for new construction, so the electrician is going to be a little bit nervous. The roofer is going to be a little bit nervous. They might not have worked with solar before. Yeah. And so in this case, we were able to, really communicate and show it's very simple. And once they saw it, everybody was like, "Oh, that's nothing. We got this."
Yeah.
This is really, it's not hard stuff. It's pretty simple stuff. It's just a matter of making sure that you're putting the pieces together at the right time. That was also a really important part, because sometimes I get called in with new construction projects like the day before they're about to put insulation in the wall. With your team, I was able to get there. There's labels that need to go on the conduit that gets buried in the wall.
Sure.
So we need to make sure all of those steps are covered. So it was really great coordination on Mike's part, just to keep us all in step with each other.
Yeah, that's great. And we felt that that's exactly what happened as well. It's fabulous. And so now a little bit of Q&A here. So that's kind of a setup for the viewers here, but the whole idea of having solar panels to many people implies that when the power goes out, your lights stay on. So what does that really mean in our particular design?
Yeah, so that's a really common misconception. So when we've got a grid tied system, which almost all systems are grid tied, particularly here in the Midwest, we have rough winters. We have days where, right now we've got shorter days. And so you're not going to be able, in most instances, to be able to produce all the power that you need. If the grid goes down, or if panels are covered with snow, they just don't work, and you're going to be grid connected. So you're going to be able to draw from the utility, which is great. One of the reasons why we can't produce power when the grid goes down is because there's a lineman out there somewhere working on a downed power line.
Sure.
They think that it's down because, the utility is having an issue. If I'm throwing energy back out there as a solar homeowner, I could possibly hurt a lineman or worse. And so it's really a safety feature, but it's really simple. So solar panels make DC power, but we need AC power in our homes. We have a small device called an inverter that does that transition. That device is constantly polling and looking at the grid. Is the grid on? Is the grid on? Is the grid on? As soon as it's not, it automatically turns itself off. So it's self-regulating. Then when the grid goes back up, it says, hey, I can turn back on. And so it will just automatically do it. So it's really seamless for the homeowner. Oftentimes they might even forget that their solar is even up there. And as soon as the grid comes back up and all their lights are back on, so is their solar power. So it's really a seamless thing, but it's a safety feature for our integration with the grid.
Yeah. And if someone wanted, and we explored this with you a little bit, if someone wanted to be able to keep their lights on when the power goes off, what would be the solution for people like that?
So this is one of the biggest advancements that's happening right now in renewables, and that's the integration of battery technology as well. With a battery technology, you're still camping. It's pretty rare for someone to be able to power everything that they want when the grid is down using a battery. So you're very much in kind of an emergency load only. So that's going to typically include your refrigerator, your freezer, sump pump, security system perhaps, or garage doors, all the things that you're going to need in an emergency situation, a few outlets, a couple of lights, so definitely not an air conditioner. Sometimes we might be able to do, if it's a conventional furnace, maybe do either a pump, if it's a radiant floor system, or the blowers on a conventional furnace, so a few other electrical loads, but it's really a limited list of loads that most people are going to do.
And I think that's a good note. I think that's a good thing to say, because I think people think that battery automatically means everything's still on. I can still do everything that I normally do, but you really have to pick and choose what are those critical systems you want to keep on.
Exactly. And if you've got, as much as I love batteries, if someone has, say, for example, a medical device that really cannot go down with the grid, they're gonna want a generator.
Yeah.
As much as I love battery technology, it still is an evolution and it's great. But if you've got, something that you need to guarantee is always powered, a generator is going to be your best bet. And generators can be sized so that they're either emergency loads only, just like the battery is, or you can buy a larger generator that's going to be whole house. And so that's an important decision criteria to kind of go through, to think about, what do we need? Do we just need, first of all, what is typical in our grid patterns? In the city of Chicago, where I live, in 20 years of living there, have probably lost power 3 or 4 times. So does a battery make sense for my situation? Possibly not. We're seeing more people doing things, powering electric vehicles at night when the grid is down, things like that. But also, you could possibly use your battery, not to overcomplicate things, but where technology is going is that, say at noon, you're filling your battery from your solar, you could actually export it intentionally during peak generation hours, and then fill your battery back up at night when the energy costs are very, very low for people who are not on fixed pricing, but on hourly pricing. So we're going to see really a change in what's happening for homeowners and businesses, quite frankly, as battery technology continues to improve and expand. So it's pretty exciting to see that technology get integrated with renewables and really allowing homeowners to be in full control of what's happening within the power of their home.
It's sort of like you are off grid. You're hiding in plain sight almost. You're sort of like off grid while you're actually on the grid of a suburban community. And that was certainly part of our decision not to go the battery route. I mean, there were 3 things. Obviously, the frequency with which we experience power outages are very similar to you. I think Amy and I can remember maybe in the last 20 years we've lived on Drury Lane, I think we've experienced, I remember 1 significant week-long power outage. And, it wasn't just us, it's the whole community, or at least our whole street that was in the same boat. So in one regard, it's sort of like, we're okay being in the dark with everyone else on the street if the lights go out. And it's sort of fun to suffer with everyone else on the 4th of July, 95-degree day, no AC. But then there was the space consideration. That's something you made apparent to me, is that, you really need this much space. The current technology required, the current form factor of these battery backup systems require some real estate for you to be able to actually have it in the home. And then, all of the other trade-offs that we had looked at in the house, as far as storage, as far as access, things like that, it sort of just made us feel like, that's really a big trade-off. And the final part, of course, was cost, is that we couldn't justify the cost of a battery backup system based upon the infrequency of power outages. And so for us, it just sort of felt like this is something that we could eventually move toward, just the same way that I'm keeping my eye on how efficient will electric hot water heaters become, on-demand hot water heaters become, and how efficient will, perhaps like an electric fireplace eventually would become, so that we could eventually migrate completely off of natural gas if we wanted to at some point. So I feel the same way about the battery backup, that eventually we could possibly entertain doing that. We may have to reconfigure some of the space issues we've got in the utility room, but it's just interesting to know that the technology is out there.
And evolving really quickly.
Yeah.
You know, so my very first touch with solar panels was actually in 1976.
Oh.
My very first science fair project, and since that time, solar prices have come down 99%.
Wow.
In 2007, I was pricing solar at somewhere around $13 a watt, and now we're installing for $3 or less per watt. So the pricing has come down tremendously as we've seen more and more people adopt solar. And batteries are going to kind of have a whiplash effect where they will have that price curve and adoption rate benefit because solar has already paved the way, which wind paved the way for solar, and solar is now paving the way for batteries. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to see the adoption rate, which will bring down pricing. You know, right now, batteries are a huge conversation in California. They have grid outages all the time because of the wildfires. And so right now, inventory for batteries is really thin because we had such a hard fire season. And it's one of the few ways that people can actually power their homes when the grid is down, because they have a lot of grid outages. You know, out in the West Coast right now, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, California, you know, as the West continues to battle that, battery adoption is going to be important. And what we saw when California, under Governor Schwarzenegger, had a very aggressive policy for battery or for solar adoption, the rest of the country benefited. You know, so as we see those early adopters move really quickly, we get to see that adoption rate, which we all benefit because the price comes down, the technology gets better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something we're going to be interested in, you know, in coming years. It's sort of like a lot about this project we're learning is sort of, let's live in the house for a while and see what it's like. Yeah. And that's certainly going to be the case with you know, how much electric use how much will our electric usage go up based upon the increased number of electrical appliances that we're going to have in the house because of the fact that we've gone away from natural gas as our heating source to all electric and multiple mini split units in the house. So, you know, again, it's going to be interesting to see how well we perform from that original theoretical energy budget that we've modeled. And and again, it really is about behavior too. We don't know whether we're going to become addicted to our sauna in our bathroom. We don't know if we're going to be loving to cook on our induction cooktop all the time and our electric cooktop. And, you know, if I continue to burn the bacon, then I'll be using the hood over the kitchen all the time, right, to get the air out. So there's all sorts of different, you know, factors involved. And it's really, you know, I was tempted to try to like calculate watts over time to estimate, you know, here's how much we expect we're going to be using. And
oh, you can go down the rabbit hole really quickly.
No way.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, a lot of times people will reach out and they'll say, well, how much does solar cost? Well, it really isn't one size fits all. You know, if you've got, let's say just in Chicago, where you've got, you know, bungalow after bungalow after bungalow, the range of what people's usage can vary tremendously. So I might have the same rooftop, so the same canvas for me to design from, but a really efficient homeowner is going to need fewer panels than somebody who is a big energy user. You know, a lot of times, like I can look at someone's electric bill and I can say, hey, listen, I can see that you know, your electric bill goes up in the winter. You know, are you guys running space heaters? And people are like, you can see that from my electric bill. And I'm like, yeah. And that's why energy efficiency is really important. So you want to start with a good envelope, which is exactly what you guys had the opportunity to do. Yeah. So I often encourage people, first look at energy efficiency. Let's get your electric bills down. And then you should really look at solar adoption so that you can have energy independence and produce your own power at the same time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great.